there, it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, I just had this idea that I wanted to go mini today. Not mini cards, but something else mini. So this is super easy. Again, this is one of those ones that you can create with the things that you probably already have. Even if you had plain paper and you can decorate it, your kids might even like doing this one. But we are going to make mini envelopes for card fronts today. So I am going to be using a couple of things here. I have some craft cardstock. This one is from Lawn Fawn and an utter favourite. Then I also have the vellum. This also happens to be from Lawn Fawn. It's the heavier 36-pound vellum, which I love, but I don't really end up using that for today's project. I use that for something else. So anyhow, I have 3 paper pads here that were kind of speaking to me that I might want to use today. 2 are from Vicky Bouton, and then one of them is the Simple Vintage Country Harvest from Simple Stories. And I have a few things in here that I probably knew I wouldn't use, but when I look on the other side, I'm like, fantastic patterns. So the big gorgeous something to be thankful for. We don't really do Thanksgiving here in New Zealand. We don't really do a pumpkin harvest or anything like that, and so we just, that's okay. But on the other side of these is gorgeous, and so what better way to use them up than this? So I have just picked a paper pad, and then I've gone through it, and I've picked, I think, about 6 or so papers that I thought would go together nicely. Again, if this is something that is stressful for you, choosing things that go together or patterns that go together, then work from the same paper pad and you've got a pretty good chance that you're going to nail it. So I was looking through just seeing what patterns I might want, and I've picked 6 already. I don't know why, but I was looking for one that had a bit more white from the orange pattern, so this one is going to fit the bill perfectly. Now, each one of these squares I'm cutting is 2 by 2 inches. Now, it does not matter what size square you create, which is the fabulous thing. So any square, you are good to go. And this is the simple instructions. Now for mine, I'm going for a sort of vintagey, sort of rusticy look. And I say that very, very loosely. So I am going to do an old trick, which I haven't done in a long time, but inking up the edges with some of the vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink. It's the only brown that I own, so I'm going to use it. And I just have a finger dob it, which I'm going to run around the edges of all of these. As I said, it's just going to add to the finished look a little bit. So all you do here is you have your square, and I mean, I'm not the best instruction giver at the best of times, but I'm going to do my best. So fold it in half, so you want to go triangle to triangle, even though I just managed to flick mine away. So triangle to triangle, corner to corner, fold it, and just do a wee pinch, a wee pinch, just so that you can make a crease, a wee mark. You won't be able to see it. Then unfold it and go the other way and make another little pinch, so that you literally have the middle of the square. If you don't want to pinch, then you could measure and put a little pencil dot as well. Then fold corner to corner into that center little pinch, that center little dot that you created. Then fold up one of the bottoms, and I try and go in a line with the 2 across there. That's where I'm lining up this corner to be. So that's where I want all 3 of those points to kind of be the same. And then if you want to, you can bend this down backwards, just like this. Or you can bend it kind of the other way so it's hidden, so to speak. Or you could just cut it off altogether. So there's little bits of options here, and I just try and keep those lines straight there. That's how I know how much to kind of bend down. Now, as I say, I prefer to bend mine in this way, and then all I need to do to secure this is add a tiny little bit of glue down each one of these sides. And then if you have some pegs handy, or if you have some reverse tweezers or something like that, then I just put these on whilst I am making the next one, and it dries whilst I am making the next one, because I am using some Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish, so I'm just using a tiny little bit. You could definitely use double-sided adhesive, that would work perfectly too. And then also, I mean, this works for normal sized envelopes as well. This works for all size. If you're doing a funny shaped card, then you can create your own envelope super easy doing this. Obviously on a much bigger scale, I'm going, again, these ones are 2 by 2 inches, but go for gold. Any size at all. So I'm just going to whip through and do all of these. I'm not going to give you the pain of sitting through watching me do every single one, but you can see once I do another one, I just take the reverse tweezers off the old one, put it on the new one, and then by the time I'm round to the next one, it's dry enough to let go. Now also this is a fun thing because you can use recycled materials to do this. I've done this with fabric and created little fabric envelopes that are reusable, and I usually just pop something temporary, some temporary adhesive or something if I would like to write an address or something. Obviously I don't put it through the post, but I do put it into gift parcels if I want, if I see a specific kind of fabric, or if I have one that just matches. It's kind of like, why not? And I usually just put the fabric envelopes together with a glue gun. So that's just lots of good options, and we love options. Now at this point you can absolutely leave these little envelopes. I decided that I would get out my corner rounder and see if I wanted to just round that top corner. So I think the first one, I think on this one does maybe a 1/2 inch and a 1/4 inch one. I did I think the 1/4 inch first maybe, and I liked the 1/2 inch better. Or the other way around. I think the other way around. But nonetheless, I ended up doing some of them. And so I add a tiny little bit of ink to the end of them just because I've taken off that little bit on the corner, but it just softens the look of them a little bit more with rounded edges, I think. But again, completely unnecessary. You can do that with scissors, easy peasy. So let's get on to creating the actual card, putting everything together. I have some weathered wood distress oxide ink here. I'm going to create just a subtle background, and there are going to be pieces in this background creation that you're thinking, gone way too far, gone way too far. Not great, but I promise you this is all going to come together, and sometimes the best way through a mistake is to keep marching forward, and I just tell myself that and we just keep going. So I have a normal piece of cardstock here. This is not watercolor cardstock. I'm just trying to get some color, some neutral color, some neutral texture into the background. Now I have this dots embossing folder here, and I couldn't find the one that I was after, and then whilst my daughter was playing down there, she was like, "Mum, isn't this the one you were after?" So this is, I think it's Couture Creations maybe. This is an old one. It's little dots, little fine polka dots, and that's, again, I'm just trying to aim for a little bit of texture in the background, not something that's going to take over, but just a little bit of texture. I'm going to run this through my Sizzix Big Shot just with an embossing mat, that tan mat, and then I'm going to get some gorgeous background dots. Now at the moment the dots are a little bit not tricky to see, but just, you know, they're really in the background. So I'm taking the same weathered wood, and I took a sponge. This sponge is not good for inking. So I was sort of rushing as normal, but I wanted to get the card finished, and I end up coming in a little bit heavy-handed, and we're getting some fairly big swipe marks here. And at this point I was like, this could be interesting, but no, we're going to rock and roll with it. So as per usual, I create my background, and then I'm going to cut it down a little bit. Again, this just makes room for a really nice white, stark white border, or if I'm going to use the craft cardstock, then I can use that as a card base, and it's going to create a really nice border there. So I just cut it down. I don't always measure, but I think I'm cutting about 1/4 inch off each side, so that finished card will end up being, the card front, will end up being 5 by 3 3/4 inches. Now I was just sort of figuring out, playing around with the layout here. I wasn't sure at this point where I was going with it, and I mean, it was coming along, but it wasn't perfect. Anyhow, so I am going to just give this a little bit of the borders that I love, a little bit more definition. Instead of using an entire matting layer, I just use a piece of mint tape, which is just a low-tack tape, and I happen to use a brush, but using a sponge or a foam or anything is going to be fine. Sometimes even directly the ink pad to the paper is going to work. And I'm just using the same weathered wood, but I'm putting on a heavy application to create a gorgeous border around the outside. It looks a bit messy until I pick it up off the paper, and then you'll just see it creates a nice clean border. Again, if you want to, you can definitely just use a matting layer of cardstock. This is just my kind of easy way without having to add another layer. And then I've got my nice clean border ready to go. Now, as for putting everything all together, I had this bit of cardstock already cut. Now this was sitting beside me, and sometimes I just want to be an efficient crafter. So this one here is from Spellbinders, and I know I've used this one lots. I love all the different patterns in here. I love the versatility. So I'm going to use, that's the pattern that I've obviously previously cut for a project or something. And I thought, why waste it? Why not use it? So this one, little one here, this is a mini stamp set from Woodware. Congratulations on your engagement. However, I found that I love the congratulations, but I don't really ever make engagement cards. I guess I haven't needed to, or I'm not sure. And so I actually decided to cut these permanently apart. So the congratulations and then on the engagement, it's just in 2 different fonts. I couldn't decide at this point what font was going to go nicely with my card. Now, if I could have, I would have stamped this in the Oxide, the Weathered Wood Oxide colour. However, I personally don't get good results, particularly for fine detail and words and things, when stamping with Oxide inks. So I have gone for the Morning Mist VersaFine Clear colour. It's basically just the grey pigment ink. It's going to stamp beautifully. And then I just roughly cut these out, cut a line across the top with the Tim Holtz 9.5 inch shears. This means I can get a nice straight line, put some double-sided tape on the back of my card front, and it's going to go down onto my white card base. My card base is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. That's pretty much the stock standard one that I use. It fits in our envelopes nicely. And then you can see that gorgeous matting layer, that border that's going to stick out. And then here is where I'm just going to sort of place these around. It just wasn't working to fit the 3. I originally was going to have 6 on there. It wasn't going to work. There wasn't enough room. I've cut it down a little bit too much. I could have made a bigger card, absolutely. But I liked the 3, and then I was trying to decide where to have the sentiment. But then I came across this, just the 4, with the congratulations in the middle, and I think this was my favourite. Just nice and plain and simple. And then I simply have a play around with the patterns that I want to use for the envelopes. But honestly, this card came together in the end pretty quickly. It didn't take me that long to make. It was a really nice little crafting session, and I pretty much had everything to hand. So with a little sentiment, making your own envelopes, it was a really fun card. All I'm going to do, these envelopes have enough dimension as is, so I'm just going to use some of the liquid glue to pop these down onto the background. And then again, exactly the same with the sentiment, I'm keeping everything super simple. So I hope that you've enjoyed this card making process. It was a little bit of a process. I hope that you've had a wonderful Christmas and a happy new year. Thank you so much for joining me this year. I just appreciate it. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for this channel, for being able to connect with like-minded people in our community. I absolutely love it. So thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.